friends, it's Barbara Sue and welcome back to Kowalski Mountain. So today we are doing an update on our preserved eggs. Now this is really supposed to be my 9-month update, but I pulled out the eggs and these were preserved on August 29th of 2021. And this is the beginning of July, so we're a little over on our 9-month update. We're going to call this the 10-month update on the preserved eggs. Now, if you haven't watched the previous video on my homestead experiment and how to preserve eggs, I'm going to tag it here. And you can see how this experiment started. Now, preserving eggs is not a new technique. This method of preserving eggs has been being done for decades. And you might have heard it under some different terms. You might have heard of water glassing eggs. Now, I don't use that term. Water glassing eggs is done with a different chemical than what I'm using here today. I'm using Pickling Lime, and this is a food-safe product. The technique of water glassing eggs actually uses a chemical that is not a food-safe product. And I'm not sure about you, but I really don't want to put a non-food safe product on my eggs, even though we don't eat the shells. So for the purposes of my videos, I always call this preserving eggs in lime to make sure that you distinguish the difference between the product that I'm using. Now, these eggs were preserved on August 29th, 2021 is when I put the eggs into this jar. And I have had a couple of floaters. What that means is that as an egg goes bad, the gases inside the shell will change and it will cause it to float. So if you're ever questioning whether or not your eggs are good, you can do what's called the float test. A good egg will sink to the bottom of a glass of water, whereas a bad egg will float. And you can see that none of the eggs in my jar are floating. I have had a couple, and I always spot check my pantry looking for that when I go in there, just to kind of keep my eye on that problem. Now, once we get in here and stir them up, we might get a few that will float, which is fine. We'll just get rid of those eggs. Now, my goal for preserving eggs is just to have enough eggs to last through the winter. Right now, the chickens are laying abundantly, and this is the time of year you need to be putting your extra eggs into the lime solution to preserve your eggs. Now, I have a full post on my blog, kowalskimountain.com, which I will have the link in the description so that you can find the full instructions on how to preserve your eggs. Now, let's see how they've done. This is the 10-month update. So these eggs have been in this solution for 10 months. Now I'm going to use a slotted spoon to take an egg out. And we're going to rinse it off. While the pickling lime is food safe, we still rinse it off. Now I have 2 eggs here. So this is the egg I just took out of the pickling lime solution. You saw me take it out. And here I have a fresh chicken egg that was laid yesterday. This was taken fresh out of the barnyard yesterday. And so let's break this open and see how it looks. One thing about the preserved eggs is the whites are thinner. They don't seem to be nearly as thick as you would find in a fresh egg. So let's open up the fresh egg right beside it. Now the shell felt really nice and firm. I was happy with both eggs and the firmness of the shells. Neither felt soft. And this is the fresh egg, just laid yesterday. Now, one thing to note, when you are preserving eggs in the pickling lime solution, you can only preserve unwashed fresh eggs. You cannot use eggs that come from the grocery store because those eggs have been washed. Eggs naturally have a coating called a bloom that seals the shell and protects the egg. When you wash the eggs, you remove the bloom, and the bloom is part of the process in preserving your eggs. So if you do buy fresh eggs from a local farmer or neighbor, ask them if they've washed their eggs. Some home farmers will wash eggs for customers because customers are used to washed eggs. Here at our farm, we don't wash our eggs. We leave them fresh with the bloom, and that way we can also store eggs on the countertop. That's another difference between these eggs, and why we can keep this jar full of eggs in our pantry is because of the way that we've handled them prior to preserving them. Now let's cook up this egg and see how it does. Now today I'm going to fry an egg for you so you can see it, how it cooks and how it behaves like a fried egg might. But I've used these eggs in baking, frying them, and any types of ways that I need fresh eggs. They work like a fresh egg because they are eggs. They've just been preserved in a solution that allows us to keep them fresh longer. Alright, that pan feels hot enough. Let's go ahead and put in our egg. Because the white is a little bit more soft, it has spread quite a bit inside my pan. You could use your spatula and kind of condense it back to the size that you want. You can also, if you're making fried eggs, you can also use mold. Another trick that people use for making eggs to make sure they fit the size of maybe an English muffin is they cook them inside of a band for canning. So let's flip this egg over. Now I'm going to go ahead and cook this other egg. That's going to be my lunch. The major difference here is that white is held together a little bit more. Not spread quite as much, but it's behaving exactly the same as the other egg. Now, I know you want to know how it tastes, so let's see how it tastes. I'm going to go ahead and slice it up. I cooked this a little bit more than I like. I wanted it to be a little bit more runny. So this is a 10-month-old egg that's been on a shelf in my pantry in the Pickling Lime solution. And it tastes just like it should. It tastes exactly like an egg. This is exactly what you would expect. Now I have been absolutely thrilled with this experiment. My goal for preserving eggs in the lime water solution is not to have eggs for up to 2 years. I have read that you can save these eggs in these jars for up to 2 years, and that's not my goal at all. I just want to make it through the winter when the chickens aren't laying very much. And with what we've done, we can easily make that goal. Now, Philip and I don't use a lot of eggs, so a jar or 2 of eggs would probably be sufficient for us, as the chickens usually lay some during the winter, just not near as much. Now, large families preserve these eggs in larger containers, 5-gallon buckets, and they can get a lot of eggs in those larger containers. I hope you've enjoyed this experiment as much as I have. This is the time for you to be preserving your eggs for the winter. If you're like the rest of us, your chickens are laying a ton of eggs and you can't hardly get rid of them. You've given them to all your neighbors, you've sold as many as you can, and you still have eggs coming out of your ears. Now's the time to preserve your extra eggs so that come this winter and this fall, when your chickens start to lay a little bit less, that you'll have enough eggs for your family. Friends, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, we really appreciate that. Please hit that subscribe button and help our channel grow. We'll see you next time.